Today on the Band Leader Says podcast, I'm going to be sharing my advice based on making 300 episodes of this podcast, and maybe other things too, so stick around if you feel like it or whatever. Do whatever you want. I'm not your dad. All right, I cannot believe that we are now at episode 300 of this show. When I started this back in 2016, I did not expect to make it 1 year. I did not expect it to make it past episode 52, yet here we are, 6 years later, episode 300. What a wild ride it's been. What a wild, fun ride it's been. And it just goes to show what a crazy person I am to still be doing this 6 years later. I think that anybody making 300 episodes of a show is a crazy person, and if you are a crazy person like me, I welcome you. Thank you for being here, fellow crazy person. I appreciate you and your hard work and your commitment to podcasting. Now, why do I think it takes a crazy person to make 300 episodes of a podcast? Let me go ahead and hold up this information that I have. If you are not watching the video version of the show, here is my hand. There is nothing in my hand because I have no data to back up what I'm about to say. That is how authoritative of a source I am. I don't think that was proper English. If I'm not mistaken, the majority of podcasts end up calling it quits after 7 episodes. Why do I think that is? First off, people start their podcast and I guess their check gets lost in the mail so they don't become millionaires. Because that's what a lot of people expect. They say, I'm going to start a podcast and I am going to get rich. Doesn't happen. Very rare to make any kind of significant money off of podcasting. Secondly, their audience also seems to get lost in the mail. Because when you start a podcast, you're supposed to get 1 million listeners from day one. Or at least 20, 30,000 per episode starting day one. But when they start to get 5 downloads per episode, they think, well, this isn't worth it. Where's my audience? They didn't show up. And third, they realize, wow, this is a lot of work. If my goal is to make a listenable, good product in terms of content and quality of audio, I can't just sit down with my buddies, drink a bunch of beers with a Blue Yeti on omnidirectional mode in the middle of an untreated space, and people won't listen to that? Why won't people listen to that? It's not as though the content is non-existent and the audio is unlistenable, painful to listen to, and Oh wait, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what the issue is. I don't know why I'm being so condescending, but I think that's why the majority of podcasters give up after about 7 episodes. They realize it is a lot of work to grow an audience. There's no automatic audience built into podcasting. There's very little money in it, especially if you can't grow your audience, because the majority of podcasts who earn a boatload of money, they do it through host-read ads. They get high CPM host-read ads because they have a large audience, so if you can't get the audience, you can't get the money, and it takes a lot of time. So when you're spending a ton of time to make a podcast that no one listens to, meaning you earn no money, a lot of people call it quits early. So I came up with 4 pieces of advice, or 4 things that I think are interesting that I have learned over 300 or more like 400 episodes of podcasting between all the podcasts that I have done. And hopefully this helps you if you are starting out, or if you are in the midst of podcasting. Hopefully this is something that you can learn from, because these are things that I learned and I wish I knew from day one. The first piece of advice is probably the most important, and this is what I've been telling anybody getting into content creation for years at this point. Do what you like. Do what you like and do what you're passionate about. Do not start podcasting just because you want to start a podcast. If you are starting a podcast, it should be because you have this burning need to talk about topic X, Y, or Z. Do not say, I want to start podcasting just because I want to podcast. So what topics are popular? Let's go ahead and chase trends. No, that's a recipe for giving up at episode 7, because you won't earn any money, you will have very low listenership, and it will take you a boatload of time. So because of that, you will say, I don't even like talking about this. Why the hell am I going to spend 12 hours a week doing this? I could be doing something that I actually enjoy. So that is the first piece of advice. Do what you like. Talk about what you're passionate about, because when you are getting 5 listeners, it's the only thing that's going to keep you going. For the first couple of years, I was getting 15 downloads, 30 downloads, nothing that would justify spending 12 hours a week on a show. But because I was passionate about it, I was able to push through the time where I was only getting 15 downloads a week. I was okay spending the time because I was having fun with it, even if nobody else was listening. And still, a lot of podcasters would look at what kind of downloads I'm getting and say, wow, you were wasting your time, bud. I don't care. I still enjoy the majority of what I'm doing. The second piece of advice that I have is there's always something better to do. Now, what do I mean by that? Because that sounds like me suggesting that you go do anything else other than podcasting. This is just something that I came to the realization of over the last 6 years. There's always going to be something trying to draw your attention away from podcasting, whether it be a new TV show or whether it be a new movie that you want to watch or whether it be hanging out with your friends or just sleeping in. There is always going to be something better for you to do instead of podcasting as a hobby. So the reason I'm bringing this up is you need to develop the drive, develop the ability to push yourself to start podcasting on that day, even if you don't initially want to, because there are many days, most Sundays, that I don't want to start podcasting. I wake up, I go for a walk, and then I say, I don't want to sit down in front of a computer and spend 8 hours doing an outline, recording, editing, publishing, blog. I don't want to do it. But I push myself to. I get a cup of coffee, I sit down at my desk and say, okay, what's going on? What are we going to talk about? And then once I hit record, I start having a blast. And then it's fun. Then when I stop recording, I think, oh, heck, now I have to edit. Oh, heck, this is going to take forever. I don't want to edit. So you need to have that ability. If you don't have it, you need to develop that ability to push yourself, even if you don't want to. That's the thing. You may think that's crazy. It's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun, and it is fun. But just because the hobby as a whole is fun doesn't mean that every single aspect of every single recording is going to be fun. It doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it 100% of the time. I can tell you with 100% certainty that people who golf don't enjoy it 100% of the time. People who video game or just game, they don't enjoy it 100% of the time. Talk to a gamer who has a terrible day gaming and they just get killed a bunch by a bunch of 12-year-olds who play video games 24 hours a day. I bet they think that was terrible. I hated every second of it and I hate video gaming. So you need to develop that drive and ability. Third, this is something that I wish I knew early on. It does not have to be perfect. And that is something that I have learned to deal with because now my podcast is perfect and I never have to edit anything ever. It's just a perfect, flawless podcast without any cuts, without any edits, without anything happening ever. But really, this is something that I had to come to terms with. Around 2017, 2018, I went down this weird rabbit hole of trying to, maybe not rabbit hole, but I was trying to make a perfect podcast where I would start recording and then end recording and not have to edit at all. And there was one weekend I was trying so hard that I ended up starting the podcast over about 40 times. Now, not only is that a stupid waste of time, but also it was stupid because it made me begin to hate podcasting. I absolutely hated it. Because I had this idea, I have to be perfect. It has to be flawless. I can't edit. It has to be a one take and it has to go out like this as live. It needs to be perfect. No, it doesn't. Edit your podcast. It's okay if you flub words. I've probably edited this about 15 times already because I am terrible. After 6 years, I still screw up all the time. But even if you are amazing, it's okay to edit because what you're doing with your edits is trying to make the best quality product for whoever is listening. You may say too many times. You may want to edit some of them out. You may pause for 15 seconds to think, And you can edit that out. You can edit that time down to make it a more enjoyable listening experience. So the entire point, the entire realization that I came to by starting a podcast over 40 times was, oh, wait a second. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can edit your show. That's acceptable. That is okay. You can edit. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the fourth piece of advice is, it's okay to take some time off. It is okay to have the desire to be lazy and miss a week or two. That's something that I struggled with because I was thinking, oh, so somebody's going to need to listen to the podcast. I can't miss a week, no. But I was burnt out. I needed a week off, so I took the week off. And you know what that did for me? Gave me the motivation the next week to actually do the podcast. And if there are weeks where you are just burnt to a crisp, just tired, whooped, you don't want to do anything, it's okay to take a week off and recharge and just chill out, because that will give you the motivation to keep making. And if anybody complains to you saying, oh, where's the episode? Just say, hey, I'll be back next week. And if you got a problem with it, I have an entire backlog you can listen to. And by taking this week off, I'm just ensuring that I will have the motivation to keep making these for years into the future and screaming at you into a microphone. That's what I've learned over 300 episodes over 6 years. You'd think it would be more impactful, some kind of mind-blowing thing that I've discovered. No, it's all pretty basic stuff. But that's something that I found out about myself. I can't just read a piece of advice and learn it. I need to experience it and learn it. I need to actually go through hardship to understand why certain things are the way they are. And that's my advice for you. I hope that helps you. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm just sharing my journey through podcasting and my journey through all of this. Now let's talk about what I've been testing. And I am going to say the thing because I forgot to say it last week. You have been listening to it. We are on Old Familiar. We are on Old Faithful. We are on the Shure SM7b. I have the EQ mode in neutral, and I realize now I am making a big mistake, but since I don't edit, I'm going to keep using this and not run into the other room, grab the proper microphone, and continue. There will not be any edits in this show ever. You may think I just edited, but I definitely did not edit, and I definitely did not switch from a new SM7B to my very original SM7B. That is what I am using. That's what you are listening to. The Shure SM7B neutral EQ mode. And why am I on the SM7B? Am I going to review it again? No. This is my original podcasting microphone. This one that I am now on, because I didn't edit, is the microphone that I bought in 2015 after researching a bunch of microphones, trying to find out what microphone was the best, and then borrowing microphones from my buddy's studio. And I landed on this. And this microphone is actually why I started Podcastage, because I was researching microphones. I couldn't find the information I wanted on this microphone or other microphones, so I started that channel. So this microphone is really the culmination of everything that I've been doing over the last 6-7 years. But that's why it's a milestone episode. 300 episodes of a podcast about tech news and creator news and my journey into whatever the hell it is that I do. And this is the microphone that really kicked it off. It was the first microphone that I used on this show. Then I started using a bunch of different microphones that I'm reviewing, but my original podcast started with the SM58, way back in the day. And then way back in the day, I had a couple of MXL 990s for a podcast in an untreated room, and then I learned very quickly, oh, I'm an idiot. This is stupid. I learned my lesson, but I had to jump on Old Familiar, and this has been my baby for 7 years now. Still going strong, still enjoy the hell out of it, and it's how I think I ought to sound on microphones. Is that because it was the first real studio microphone I used? I have no idea. I would like to think not, but it's possible that it was the first studio style microphone that I invested how much? $350 at the time. $350. Now it's $400. I bought this back when it was $350. But yeah, there you go. That's what you're listening to. The original SM7B that I bought for this podcast. Because why the hell not? Next, let's jump to what you had to say. And the first comment comes from Rod Wheeler. And he says, "You know the sound is good enough for 95% of any audience. Great show." Rod, thank you very much for the kind comment. I appreciate that very much. Always, you are too kind. And of course, Rod is talking about the CAD U1, which I used last week, $16 microphone. And I think it proved the point. It proved the point that getting audio that is good enough is relatively affordable. I will be the first to admit, after listening back to last week's episode, was the processing good? No. Did it sound great? No. But I won't say I'm an audiophile, but I am very in tune with audio. I pay a lot of attention to audio. I pay more attention to audio than 99.9% of people in the world. I didn't enjoy the sound of it, but I thought it was listenable. I thought it was tolerable. And for the vast majority of people out there, I think last week's audio would be more than sufficient. It's not painful, it's not distracting, easy to understand, workable. $16. Would I do things differently? Sure. But going back to what I was talking about earlier, my advice, it does not have to be perfect. It doesn't just go for editing, it goes for processing as well. If I wanted to try to get perfect audio last week, I would have spent 20 hours just fiddling about with different plugins trying to get the exact sound that I wanted. I had to make the executive decision on my one-man show to say, yeah, that's good enough. Let's go ahead and publish that. And that's because I have other stuff that I have to do. I got other channels I got to run. I need to relax sometime. I still work a day job. I run other YouTube channels. And then my day off, I do this. So I need to say, why am I clapping? That's me wiping my hands. Can you tell I've never worked a hard day in my life? My thought of just brushing off my hands is clapping. Yep, that's enough. I'm calling it quits there. Publish. Thank you very much, Rod. I appreciate that, and I agree. The majority of any audience would be more than okay listening to that. Is it perfect? Is it great? No. Is it tolerable? Is it intelligible? Yes. Next, we have a comment from Andrew Burkett. He says, 2 things. I have a UA Apollo Twin, and I am not a fan at all. I have not found a way to justify the price to performance without factoring in the plugins. This makes the price to performance even worse for me. Lol. 2. I just watched your review of this mic today, speaking about the CAD U1. Now I'm hearing it with your sound editing. I think it sounds incredible for $16. Andrew, thank you very much for the comment, and I agree with you. It sounds incredible for $16. When I was starting recording at home with a little stick microphone plugged directly into my motherboard, I would have killed to pay $16 and get that quality audio. It's amazing the quality that people are able to get today for their recordings for such a low price point. I would have loved to get audio that sounded as good as last week's episode or as good as my review for $16 in the early aughts. That would have been incredible. But I also wanted to include this because of you pushing back against the Universal Audio ecosystem being so expensive. It is stupid expensive, it is prohibitively expensive, and yeah, it doesn't make much sense. You could easily get by with a Focusrite interface for $150. You could easily get by with an Audient interface for $200, or an SSL interface now for $300. You could easily get by with those and get some aftermarket plugins for significantly cheaper, and nobody would know the difference. I have way too expensive of an interface from Universal Audio. I have spent way too much on Universal Audio plugins. And do you know how many of those plugins I use regularly? 3. 3 of them. Do you know how many of those plugins I use regularly on every week's podcast? 1. I use 1 of them. I use 3 when I'm in my voice chat, but the majority of the time, for any podcast, I use 1, and that is the LA2A Silver. So terrible price to performance, but it works great, and it does the job that I needed to do, and I had higher hopes for what I was going to be doing with the gear that I bought. And that's an issue that I think a lot of people have, or at least I have run into. I have these high expectations of what I'm going to do. Oh, if I buy this, I'm going to be able to do this and this and this and this and this. If I buy this new guitar, I'm going to be able to play like Yngwie Malmsteen. Then I get it and realize, no, you aren't. You are not going to do that. And that's another thing that I've learned. This is just life advice at this point. Just, are you really? Ask yourself, are you really? Oh, if I buy this tube preamp, I'm going to use it all the time. Are you really? Are you? If you buy that new guitar, if I buy this new guitar, I'm going to practice 20 hours a day. Are you really? For me, the answer is 95% of the time, no. So I've learned to curb my desire to buy a bunch of fancy stuff because, no, I'm not going to. All right, next. Hopefully that was interesting. I think I got some interesting advice out of that. Next, we have a comment from Drank Live. They say, they're going to pull in a bunch of the big podcasts as audio only, and it'll add pressure on the creators to eventually add a video element, which will make podcasting more like TV and radio is dead again. They'll probably exclude any old radio properties like NPR shows and old AM and sports talk shows, and they'll focus on people like David Spade, Dana Carvey, for example. It'll also pressure a lot of the podcasters who are making deals with some of these podcast giants like Stitcher to reconsider the deal where they can't easily join in on video. Fortunately, a company like Earwolf can pivot by adding videos and still charge a monthly membership charge like their own. They'll just link you to videos instead of audio. Spotify has forced YouTube's hand on this one, and YouTube's biggest advantage is that they can add all these videos today, no problemo. If they could only convince these podcasters to do 100% of the work and shell out for the equipment, while Spotify isn't ready to handle video yet, besides Joe Rogan who forced them to add it, they're not ready for the increased load of video, and their backend probably isn't ready for people to add videos themselves or anything like that, or whatever. I guess who cares? I don't know why I wrote so much. I am right, though. Drank Live, thank you very much for the comment. I appreciate it very much, but I do not agree with you completely. I don't think that YouTube is going to be able to just pull in a bunch of podcasts and put them on their platform. The reason I'm saying that is when Spotify launched, they required you to, as a podcaster, to go in and manually add your podcast. Now, why is that? That's because Spotify runs ads in their platform, in their app, meaning Spotify is earning money when your podcast is playing. They're earning money maybe not directly, but tangentially related to your podcast. So because of that, I imagine that Spotify couldn't just go to iTunes or podcastindex.org and say, okay, we're going to pull all the audio podcasts out there, publish them on our platform, and earn money off of them. Just like a radio show, just like a radio channel, radio network. What are they called? Radio station. Wow, that was a brain fart. Radio really is dead, isn't it? But that's why I don't think radio stations can just pull podcasts, broadcast them, and then put their advertisements in them. Actually, I don't think they could pull any podcast and just broadcast it even without ads, but that's beside the point. Because Spotify is earning money off of the podcasts on their platform, tangentially at least, I think that's why they required you to say, yeah, go ahead and publish my podcast. I know some podcasters said, no, do not allow my podcast in your network. And now that Joe Rogan got a couple $100 million for allowing his podcast on the network, I think a lot more podcasters are thinking, if I made a mistake, this is a big mistake that I made just giving it away for free. And it makes a lot of sense. But the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because YouTube is not going to be rolling out all of this podcast feature for the goodness of their heart. They're not doing it just for the heck of it. They're doing it because they want to have audio-only ads. They want to run ads. And if they are making money off of the audio podcasts, chances are they are going to be required to have you say, yes, go ahead and put my audio podcast on YouTube. Go ahead and put it in your directory. I don't think they can pull any audio podcast that they want and just put ads on it and then take all the money. I think if YouTube is going to be earning money off of these, they either need to do revenue share, like they do with all of their YouTube videos, which I think would be the best, because that will motivate people to make higher quality content, or they will need you to manually say, yes, go ahead and add my content and not share it. But at least then you said, yes, add my content to this platform and I'll forego any revenue. You're giving them the rights to do that. So I disagree there. I don't think they're going to just pull in a bunch of big podcasts. Now, that's assuming that what you're saying with pulling in big podcasts is just going out grabbing the RSS. If you're talking about incentivizing big podcasts to come onto the platform, yes, I agree they are going to be doing that. It's why they have hundreds of thousands of dollars to motivate podcasters to create video podcasts. And again, here I am sitting, oh gosh, if I made a big mistake, I gave it away for free. Yeah, I have. I also agree that Spotify is not ready for video podcasting. I still don't have my video podcast on Spotify because I don't think they have the back end. If I'm not mistaken, Spotify takes all of your audio files and hosts them on their servers. They re-encode it, if I'm not mistaken. They don't have the server or bandwidth or anything to handle video for 400,000 podcasts. Ain't gonna work. Ain't gonna happen. I don't think they're making enough money to make that work. And YouTube is coming for their lunch. And YouTube's a big old dog and Spotify's a little chihuahua. And this Doberman is coming for that ham sandwich. They're gonna get it. They're gonna get it. All right, thank you very much, Drank Live. I appreciate your comment. Next, we have a comment from Soundspeeds. He says, I hope YouTube doesn't delete my comment this week like they did last week. About inflation on audio gear. In October 2020, the AKM semiconductor plant in Nobuoka, sorry, anybody who's Japanese, I think that's Japan, which made circuits used in audio gear had a fire. In March 2021, earthquakes in Japan and the snowstorm in Texas further caused disruptions in electronics delivery. The part shortage has increased demand and thereby price of many electronics and automobiles. There is a new factory being built, but it's not expected to be built before 2025. Inflation and the parts shortage is driving up prices on audio gear. Even when manufacturers redesign products to use available parts, it still means re-engineering, redesign, and changes in the manufacturing process, not to mention distribution. It's an expensive problem. Alan, thank you very much for the comment. I think that is a great summation of why we're running into this issue where certain audio equipment is increasing in price, and it's very similar to the tube shortage. If anybody is unaware, currently there's kind of a tube shortage. Reason being, there are very few factories that make vacuum tubes, one of them being in Russia, one of them being in China, and one of them being in Slovakia, I think, and the Slovakia one is JJ Tubes. I've been using JJ since 2004, 2005, great tubes. But the reason we have a shortage, in China, I think it was 2018, 2019, there was a fire, and the factory still has not opened back up. So no tubes out of that factory. Russia, don't know if y'all are aware, kind of something going on over in Russia, so we're not really getting tubes out of that factory. That leaves one factory making vacuum tubes for all of the audio equipment. And currently, last I checked, which was a couple of weeks ago, there was a backlog of 6 months, probably up to a year by now, so chances are audio equipment with tubes is going to skyrocket in price or just be unavailable. And that's just the way that the world works right now. Does it suck? Absolutely. But there's a shortage of a bunch of different components for multiple reasons. It's almost as though it's a perfect storm. And then also, our money is being devalued. I think the money of every fiat currency is being devalued. It's being inflated. So yeah, the prices of everything is going to increase. And in situations like with audio equipment where the components are limited further, going to increase the price even more. I did have another comment, but I don't feel like going into this. So let us jump to that's my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. That's what we're doing. Welcome back to the Ask Bandrew segment. If you have questions, go to askbandrew.com. 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 There are instructions on how to send in audio, video, and text. I personally prefer audio and video because I am a poor reader. I am very bad at reading aloud. And if you send in audio and video, I don't have to read. So win-win-win. I win, you win, and then listener wins. How cool is that? Win-win-win. That never happens. It's always win-win-lose or win-lose-lose or lose-lose-lose. It's very rarely win-win-win. This is a win-win-win. Send in audio and video. And if you're desperate, text will work. Anyway, let's jump to the first voice submission. This comes from Daniel from Poland. Take it away, good sir.
Hi, Bandrew. My name is Daniel. I am from Poland. Not Holland, but Poland in Central Europe. I am currently speaking into neat Worker B condenser cardioid microphone, which I really love and which I have waited a long time for because it was not available here. The microphone is connected directly to the Steinberg UR22C audio interface. I probably add some soft compression and a bit of correction in the post-production. First, I'd like to say hello to you and thank you for the great job you are doing on your YouTube channels, which I have been watching regularly for almost 2 years. They are very interesting and I appreciate them very much. Thanks for such an honest and critical review of all audio devices and for having a good time watching it. I would also like to mention that while you often point out that you are an annoying person, I didn't notice at all. You have a specific sense of humor, but that only makes your videos even more awesome. The only annoying thing I found on your show is that piece of music appears in the Ask Bandrew segment and in the end of the episode. Forgive me please if this is your piece of music. Either way, your channel are great. So let's move on to the topic. Here is my question. I am planning to buy a podcasting microphone that will allow me to reduce unwanted background noise. The assumed budget I want to spend on it is about $100, $115, maybe more. Personally, I prefer condenser microphones because of their sound quality, clarity of sound, and so on. Of course, the condenser mic will work well in many situations, but unfortunately, in the case of the room in which I record, they pick up too much noise. So I am considering buying a dynamic microphone, and here I am asking you for an advice. The room I recorded in is not treated well acoustically, but I am not going to change much because I don't have such possibilities. It's a living room where I live every day, so I cannot pick it with a Spong and other acoustic accessories. But overall, the room is not so bad. The worst are sounds from outside, from other apartments reach the room. Sometimes they're quite loud. You may hear a train or a plane in the background if one appears during this recording. I would like to reduce the amount of these sounds picked by the microphone as much as possible. What would you recommend? A dynamic microphone or a lav or a shotgun microphone? Should I turn to Shure SM7b, Personally, I am not big fan of it, especially in this price. But if it would effectively reduce the sound coming from outside the room, I can consider buying it. Or maybe the cheaper version, Shure MV7. Do you think it will be better? Regards, thank you, and sorry about my poor English.
Daniel, thank you very much for the voice submission, but more importantly, thank you for not finding me annoying. That really does mean a lot to me because I find myself annoying. And I should know because I edit this show. I have to listen to myself for hours on end, and yeah, I find myself annoying. To answer the second thing, you find the music for the Ask Bandrew segment and the outro music to be annoying. Yeah, I make that. I made that music, so I apologize for doing something that's annoying. And another thing that I want to say, do not apologize for your English. Your English is outstanding, and your English is about 1,000,000% times infinity better than my Polish, which is 0, because I speak 0 Polish. So I appreciate you for speaking English so well. Thank you very much for that. To summarize your question, you're looking for a $100 to $115 microphone that rejects the most background noise. Do I recommend a lavalier, shotgun microphone, or dynamic mic? Lavalier microphones are typically going to be omnidirectional, so I do not think that would be the best choice for you. Meaning omnidirectional picks up sound all the way around it, going to pick up a lot of room tone. Secondly, shotgun microphones may be effective, but given the budget, there's not really much that I would recommend in that price range for a shotgun mic. The one that I typically recommend as the cheapest is the Audio-Technica AT875R, which I think sounds fantastic, but it's about $180, bit out of the budget there. And because of that, I am leaning towards a pretty standard recommendation for me. $100 handheld dynamic microphones. 2 options, really more 3. SM58 if you do want that SM7b style. Not going to give you SM7b sound, but Shure has a certain sound quality to it. They have their sound character. SM58's classic, standard, everybody knows them. Everybody's familiar with them. I won't say everybody loves them because not everybody does. The second one is the Sennheiser E835. That is not my favorite microphone. My least favorite of the bunch that I'm listing because very, very bright. A lot of people conflate brightness with condenser mics, so a lot of people think the E835 is more condenser-like. I think it's a bit overboosted, bit too bright for my liking, but if you want that really bright sound, Sennheiser E835. And the real one I'm recommending is the SE Electronics V7. That is more of a neutral sounding microphone, bit of extension into the treble and air, also great background noise rejection, just a wonderful sounding microphone. A little bit out of your budget, I think by $5. I think that's $120 now. And that's the one I would go for, SE V7. That's my recommendation. Hopefully that helps. Daniel, if you have already purchased a microphone, let us know in the comments what you decided on, and I appreciate you very, very much. Let us now jump to a voice submission from David. Take it away, David.
Hello, Bandrew. David here. I've been watching your channel for a couple of years now, and I've been going through and binging all of your podcast episodes on Spotify. As a content creator and podcaster yourself, how would you recommend improving the tone of your voice to sound more enthusiastic? I want to get into doing voiceovers, but I always feel my voice is really monotone and boring to listen to. I also purchased a Rode NT1 from your review and mic from Booth Junkie. That's what I'm using now. I love the sound of it. I'm working on getting a bit more sound treatment for my room also, to increase the quality. Thank you for making all the content you do. I appreciate the effort you put into it, and not to mention the money as well. Cheers, Bandrew.
David, thank you very much for the voice submission. To summarize, you were asking, how do I recommend sounding more enthusiastic in your vocal recordings or vocal performances? First thing I want to say, I love your voice. It reminds me of a 1970s, 1980s nature documentary, David Attenborough style, very calm, very collected, not overly excited, just enjoyable to listen to and easy to listen to. But if you do want more energy in your recordings, if you want more enthusiasm in your recordings, I have a couple of probably pretty bad suggestions because I am not a voice actor. But when it comes down to it, if you are speaking in a voice that is not how you normally speak, you are in a sense acting. You are putting on a performance. So this is going to fall into the acting. I am an actor. It's going to fall into that category, I think. First thing I would recommend is projecting your voice a bit more. It is a lot easier to sound enthusiastic or energetic if you are speaking in a louder volume. I don't mean like screaming like me back in 2015. But if I'm whispering, I'm going to sound a bit less enthusiastic. I'm going to sound a bit drier, a bit boring, a bit unenergetic, for lack of a better word. Or if I want to, I might just start vocal frying into the microphone like it's the NPR. NPR, man. NPR, project your voice a little bit. Support your voice with your diaphragm. Which would you rather listen to? Hi, guys. This is NPR. Today, we have a story to tell. Or, hey, welcome to NPR. Today, we have a story to tell. Here is the story that we are telling. Support your voice. Support your voice. You are an actor, NPR. So that's the first tip. Project your voice. Do not damage your voice. Do not become too tense, which is something I do struggle with. I do end up getting a bit too tense. Not as tense as I used to be. 2016, 2017. It was, hey guys, how's it going? My voice is so tight. That's how I used to sound. But it's about finding a happy middle ground between, hey, NPR. I'm just under the microphone about the news. I'm just letting it. And hey, it's a podcast-ish. It's finding a happy middle ground between this. I think I've hammered home the point a bit too much. Second, try to intentionally fluctuate the pitch in your voice. And I know this is kind of crappy advice because you're saying, how do I stop sounding so monotone? And my advice is, use multiple tones instead of one. I know that's bad advice, but if you intentionally try to fluctuate, the pitch in your voice makes you sound a little bit more enthusiastic. Obviously, do it more natural than that because that sounded like a crappy Christopher Walken, where I just tried to get the inflection of his voice as opposed to the actual character. But if you are just I even fluctuated pitch there. If you are just talking in a single pitch, it is going to sound very dull, very monotone, very boring. But if you go ahead and intentionally try to fluctuate the pitch of your voice, that's going to make it sound more interesting. It's going to make you sound more enthusiastic and energetic and passionate about what you're talking about. It's about getting that variation to draw interest into what you're saying. But also, it seems more natural. You will hear people who will end sentences. It's called upspeak. So today we're going to talk about. A lot of people do that because they think it leaves the sentence open. And that's intentional, I think. Maybe it's subconscious, but I think people do that because it leaves the sentence open and it leaves the listener wanting to know what's going to be said next. I dislike upspeak, though. Today we're going to talk about, that's a really exaggerated example, but listen for it. It will drive you crazy. Just like, hey, this is NPR. Maybe vocal fry with upspeak. Hey, this is NPR. Today we're going to talk about... I'm an idiot. Third, sorry. I think I'm funny. That's all that matters. I don't care if you think I'm the dumbest person in the world, the most unfunny person. I am having a blast. Going back to my advice, have fun with what you're doing or be passionate about it. Third suggestion, smile while you're recording. This will make you look like a psychopath. If anybody walks in while you're just speaking whatever is on a page while you're smiling, You're gonna look like a crazy person. People will think you have finally snapped and that they should leave the room immediately, very quietly, back away without taking their eyes off of you. But a smile is audible. It is very audible. Let me go ahead and put on a frown and say, today I went ahead and went for a walk. It was a lot of fun. Or I'll smile. Today I went for a walk and it was a lot of fun. It's not the most noticeable thing, but it does add a bit of brightness to the recording, to what you're saying, to the performance, if you actor. Why do I keep doing that? It adds a bit of brightness to what you're saying. So that's another way. You are, in fact, acting. So act. I am enthusiastic about this thing, so act enthusiastic about it. You may not be enthusiastic about whatever story you're reading, but if the role that you're reading requires enthusiasm, act. They're not called I guess they are called voiceover artists. I was about to say they're not called voiceover artists, they're called voice actors. So act, bro. But they are called voiceover artists too. Don't listen to me, I'm stupid. The final thing, the fourth piece of advice. Also get advice from somebody who's actually a voice actor or voiceover artist like Mike Delgadio. The last thing I would recommend is try standing and moving around a bit. Maybe not moving around, but standing up and having the ability, the freedom to move around a little bit more makes you feel a little bit looser. If you've watched The Big Bang Theory as much as I have, you will know that when Sheldon needs to learn how to act, what does he do? He goes and talks to Penny, who's an actress. She says, go ahead, move around in your space. Feel comfortable in your body. And she just moves around all silly, all willy-nilly, like I'm doing right now. I don't know how I'm looking. I did not look at the camera. I bet that was the dumbest looking thing I have ever done on this channel. But having that freedom to move around will give you a little bit more freedom, looseness in your voice. A little more lively, a little more fluid. All right, that's my advice, David. Thank you very much for the voice submission. Final voice submission comes from Joshua. Take it away, Joshua.
Hey, Mr. Bandrew. Huge fan of your work. My name is Joshua Harover, and I am a freelance voice actor from the state of Florida. I'm one of your subscribers on both your YouTube channels, and I recently hit the join button on Podcastage. So, here's my question for you. Recently, I noticed some noise in some of my recordings. I was able to confirm that the noise is coming from my computer and from the fan and from the internal components of my laptop. And I've been able to get rid of the noise with noise reduction and by copying and pasting clean, empty lines of audio from Audacity over the noisy areas and then combining that with noise reduction to help the recording at least come out a little bit smoother. But I want to develop a system where I can stop recording with my microphone using my computer so that I don't have to do so much noise reduction in post-production and that I can just have a better recording out of the gate so that it will sound more natural and that editing won't take as long. My solution is to just take my microphone, which is a Shure SM57, and plug it into a Zoom recorder, like a Zoom H5 or a Zoom H6. Of course, a Zoom H5 costs $300. So do you have any recommendations on other things that I could try to help reduce the noise that's coming from the computer or help reduce how much of it comes into contact with my audio chain?
Thank you very much for the voice submission, Joshua. To summarize, you were saying, how do you decrease the amount of computer sound that makes it into your recording? You are considering a Zoom recorder so you can record farther from your computer, but that is expensive. Yes, that is a very expensive solution to your issue. 3 things that I will recommend, or 3 options here. First, suggestion. Make sure the microphone's dead area. Microphones have what are called polar patterns. That tells you what area around the microphone picks up audio. There is going to be a null area or a dead area that picks up sound the least. On cardioid dynamics, that will typically be the rear of the microphone, or always the rear of the microphone. But depending on the design, we're getting into the weeds. So yeah, point the rear of the microphone towards the computer, towards the sound sources. That will decrease the computer fan noise as much as possible in this orientation. If I were to face the side of this microphone towards the computer fan, as I pop the microphone as well, you're going to hear more of the computer fan. But if I face the rear of the microphone towards the computer fan, the microphone will pick up less of the computer fan. Second solution is going to cost you a little bit of money, but this is probably the solution for you. Get a longer microphone cable, get a microphone stand, hit record on your computer, go stand over by a microphone that's 5-10 feet away from your computer, and record. However long your headphones allow you to be away. Get away from the computer, get the microphone away from the computer, and that will get you much better results. That's probably what I think you ought to do. I don't know your exact setup, exact situation, but that's going to be your best bet. Get the microphone away from the computer to solve the issue of the microphone picking up the computer. Number 3, this will be the most difficult. Get the computer out of the room or on the other side of the room. That would require a bunch of cables, HDMI, USB extenders, whatever else you need to connect. That would be expensive. So I think the best solution would be get a long mic cable, maybe get a headphone extender, a headphone 1/4-inch cable extender, and then hit record, walk over to your microphone where the rear of the microphone is still pointing at the loud sound sources so that you're picking up as little of that sound as possible, and get to recording. I think that's the best course of action. You'll be able to tell me if that's terrible advice or not, but that's what I would recommend. All right, that's the end of the body of the podcast, but we still have Movie of the Week because we missed one last week. The movie of this week is Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City, or Raccoon City. Raccoon City? Raccoon City. Spider-Man CPA. Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man, not Spider-Man CPA. Like it's Raccoon City, not Raccoon City. If you plan on watching this, if you want to avoid spoilers, let me quote the greatest audio creator on YouTube. You are dismissed. Leave. Go away. That was my Curtis Judd impression. Leave. Go away. That's what he tells me whenever I show up at his house. Leave. Go away. You're not welcome here. Kind of rude, but I get it. Anyway, what am I talking about? Okay, my thoughts on Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. I thought it was a very tolerable movie. I had a good time watching it. It is 100% fan service. I don't know why fan service is viewed as a bad thing. It's a movie about a video game. That's clearly going to be a movie made for fans of the video game. So why would you want a movie about a video game not being fan service? Wouldn't you want the movie to be made for the fans? It's 100% fan service, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. I had no issue with that. I do think this is a much more accurate rendition of Resident Evil based on the video games compared to the Mila Jovovich universe. And this film does have its flaws, which I will discuss. But if this is the route they're going, if they're going to make more films in this universe using these characters, using these actors, using this timeline, whatever it is, I will absolutely see them because I do think they are on the right path. As far as the film as a whole, I like the time setting. It is set in the time of the video games, late 90s in Raccoon City. I'm never going to get tired of saying that. Raccoon. I've never said it raccoon. Raccoon City. And there is a Palm Pilot in this movie. There is a Palm Pilot. When's the last time you've seen a Palm Pilot in a movie? I can't recall last time I've seen one. And I like that they set it in the late 90s and they don't play up the technology to be this crazy military grade, all sterile, clean whatevers like the early 2000s. This is much grimier feeling, much more realistic. Realistic might be the wrong word, but much more grimy and dirty and visceral might be the right word, which I enjoyed a lot more than the early 2000s ones, which I did like, but this is a completely different feel. But the issue that I have with this is the fact that it seems as though they combined Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, the video game stories, into this one film. It's not inherently an issue, but that leads to there being way too many characters introduced way too quickly, and there's way too many storylines going on, and we don't get to know or care about any of the characters. I don't care about anybody in this movie. I wanted to, but I don't. I think this would have been better broken up into a 2 or 3 part film because there's so much going on. And it all seems so glossed over, so top levels. There's very little focus going on. You do get a little bit with Claire Redfield, but not enough to really care about her. And the reason that's an issue, it wouldn't be a problem if I didn't know about the movie really, or know about the video game lore. But there are so many interesting characters in this movie, in this universe, that you want them to actually go in with a magnifying glass and explore each of them, understand their motivations, as opposed to have one of the main driving characters of the entire story be on screen for maybe 2 minutes. That's it. The it was just for money. Oh, cool. Thanks for all that amazing it was just for the money? Well, how about we learn a little bit more about his backstory? Why was he into the money? Okay, it's a poor town. Really? That's going to lead somebody? I don't buy it. So I think that's the main drawback. There's too many characters, too many storylines, and they tried to do too much in this film. They needed to break it up, in my opinion. But like I said, I still enjoyed the heck out of it because I'm a Resident Evil fan. If they make more films in this universe, I will watch them because this is a good start. I won't say great start, a good start. Has its flaws, but still a fun watch. Hopefully that was interesting. That's it. Episode 300 in the can. Let's be honest here. This was my 3rd attempt at recording this podcast episode. That's right. So talking about starting a podcast over 40 times, this was number 3. A lot better. But I wanted to actually do this one well. I didn't want to phone this one in, and I felt as though I was going to phone it in on one of the older recordings, so I just said, this is garbage. Let's actually get in it and record. And I had a lot of fun on this one. I just let my brain take me wherever it wanted to go, and so I should have put a little break on it, but I didn't. Here's to 300 more. I didn't buy a watch yet. I don't think I'm going to. I was talking about that a couple of weeks ago. I was saying, I gotta wait till 300 to buy a new watch. I don't think I'm going to do that. Especially as the economy's just tanking, I can't afford to buy a new watch. So I'll just stick with the watch that I got and enjoy the heck out of it. Today I'm wearing a G-Shock. Not my favorite watches, but gosh darn it if they aren't functional as heck. Functional as heck, and it makes me feel like the 1980s, because if you didn't know, G-Shock, was it 1984? Was it 1984? Or was it 1986 that the G-Shock came out? Probably one of the most important watches of the last 30, 40 years. Pretty amazing technology. This is radio control. Why am I going into watch talk? Maybe you care. This is radio controlled and solar powered, so I never have to do anything with it. I just have to wear it, charges up, never have to change the battery, it turned on daylight savings time automatically. How cool is that? Yeah, not my favorite though. I just don't like the look. It's a bit too chunky. Anyway, that was a complete tangent, unrelated to anything ever. I appreciate you watching and listening. Here is to 300 more. You are amazing. I love you. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, we'll talk at you. You have an amazing week. I will talk to you then. Bye-bye.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.